the team that won 6-1 deserves so much praise. The team that were 5-0 up after 21 minutes with some fantastic goals. The through ball, I think it was for the fourth, was just scintillating. So it's time for a bit of a love-in now, not between the three of us, but between you two, talking about Newcastle, their performance, what Eddie Howe's done, and how they just blew Spurs away, Janusz, in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, nothing has changed. I think we've been talking about this Newcastle team for a long time. They had that soft spell. Everybody does it in the Premier League. That happened when Bruno Guimaraes was out, remember? I mean, they've hit a number of draws and maybe a loss as well. We saw how wonderful he's been. He's got a number of leaders there. You saw Fabian Schär, again, absolutely wonderful. See Alexander Isak, for whom they had to wait and who had to confirm how good of a striker he is. There's so much talk about Newcastle needing a number 9. They have a number 9. They'll probably need to add to it anyway, right? Because they're building for a number of competitions next season.
I'm doing a live thing here.
But I think, if you look at it as a whole, they've been tremendous. If you look at Murphy, look at Willock, as you've mentioned, wonderful pass, and they've been tremendous. Joelinton changing his role, playing in the midfield, can play in the front as well today. Again, wonderful. I mean, there isn't one player that had an off game. Add to it Kieran Tierney, not Tierney. Why am I? Kieran Trippier, who maybe, in my opinion, was the most important transfer that they've made. Not only because he's the captain, but the way he organizes everything. Came from Atletico Madrid. Obviously, has learned even more discipline under Diego Simeone as well. So I think there's just tweaks. I mean, even somebody like Longstaff, right? I mean, how much better has he gotten under Eddie Howe? I mean, it's been absolutely tremendous. It's almost as if that midfield doesn't function the same without him. He just came back in this game, and again, absolutely wonderful. So I think Newcastle have done it in a smart way. They've had all the money in the world, but they've decided to put down a foundation for what's to come. They didn't just go out there to buy any players, big names, spend a lot of money. I think that that's what I've mentioned. I think, to me, it's just stability against chaos, and that's the way to build a football club. And you know what? Everybody knows they deserve it up there.
James, Newcastle are what Chelsea should have been. Loads of money, but absolutely no stability at Stamford Bridge. That's another argument for another day, why Chelsea are where they are, why they didn't follow the Newcastle model. But Janusz has got a point. This is someone, the owners, that could have come in and just splashed the cash, but they decided to strengthen the defence, a bit like Cloughy used to do with Peter Shilton. They've got a good goalkeeper. They've got an excellent defence. Do they have the squad? Janusz touched on it there. Do they have the squad to compete in multiple competitions next season, likely the Champions League? And if they don't, where do you think they need to add so they've got strength and depth everywhere, James?
Well, this is the next phase of their development, isn't it? I mean, they are, if they finish in the top 4, they're ahead of schedule, undoubtedly. I don't think anybody had them finishing the Champions League this season. And you're right, it is a testament, I think, to... Spurs appointed Conte and then went short of backing him wholeheartedly. They had one foot in, one foot out. Newcastle haven't done that. They've appointed Eddie Howe, who wasn't necessarily the sexiest name that was linked with this club at the time. But they've adopted a more methodical approach, safety first, if you like, or it's foundations first. Into the best defensive record in the Premier League. It's remarkable, really. If they qualify for the Champions League, as it increasingly looks like they will do, they will have to strengthen, though. They won't have the one game a week, the time to recover, that obviously they're benefiting from this season. I think the fullbacks are probably an obvious area, as good as Kieran Trippier is. You've got Dan Burn playing left back today. I know that there's a specific tactical reason why they tend to do that, but you don't see that being sustainable. They've got Matt Target, they probably need to upgrade in that area. Look, in Isak, they've got a very exciting player. I think they probably should strengthen, maybe in midfield. You'd want a little bit more creativity in there alongside Guimaraes. But it's not major surgery. It's more a case of making sure that their best 11 is as fresh for the biggest games as can be. You look at the drop-off, and actually, really, Spurs are another good example of it. You look at the drop-off. Tottenham's best 11 is okay. Not great, but it's okay. Defensively, it's still vulnerable. That's another conversation. but the drop off is quite marked, and that's really when Newcastle have to look now, is to think, well, how interchangeable are 3, 4, 5 players if we want to make multiple changes, which we're going to need to play 3 games a week for for the whole of next season.
Janusz, final question to you. James has just spoken about Newcastle, probably overachieved as far as their timescale of development is concerned by doing so well this season. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, when can Newcastle win the league? But what do they have to do, as well as the squad adjustments that James has just mentioned, to go from where they are now? Because they didn't spend all that money just to finish in the Champions League every year. They spent all that money ultimately to try and be a title contender. How far away are they from being considered at the start of the season as, Man City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man United, and Newcastle as a kind of group of 5 among maybe others, rather than, Newcastle are probably best of the rest?
I think the most important thing for Newcastle United will be to maintain the top 4 status, because as James has mentioned, I mean, they're way ahead of schedule, and I'm afraid, I'm hoping that the expectations are not going to be too high, because as good as this season has been, we see a little bit of a drop off. Right, Manchester United has done a great thing in picking a great leader in there, Ten Hag. They're going to be stronger. They're going to want to fight for the trophies. Chelsea's off. Liverpool are off. Manchester City are going to be Manchester City. That's not going to change. Arsenal is probably going to strengthen. They're going to fight. So I think it's going to be a much, much tougher season for Newcastle and for everybody else as well. So I wouldn't go as far as saying, okay, if they get 2 or 3 of those players, and James mentioned perfect positions, I think in the center of the pitch, somebody to maybe when Bruno Guimaraes is not available to kind of be at that same level, but I don't think 2 or 3 players are going to change it, and we're going to be sitting here ahead of next season saying Newcastle United are fighting for the top spot or to win the league. They may very well do that, but I just think the expectations are a funny thing. And right now, if I were them, I just want to make sure to stabilize this team even more and make sure they're always part of that top 4. After that, every year, every transfer window, you had a player or 2. And depending on how all the other teams are doing, there may be an opportunity. There may be a window for Newcastle United to ask a question. If they continue defensively as they are right now, that's massive, because maybe I'm biased being a defender, but I just think that you need to have that stability, and they have already plenty of going forward.
Thanks to Janusz, thanks to James. Spurs will get all the headlines following this one, but it's Newcastle that get all 3 points, winning the first set 6-1.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.